Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to English 1102 online. It is officially week 2, and we are going to continue with our discussion of cultural analysis, which falls under the larger discussion of analysis. So remember, the first couple weeks for this class, we will be covering analysis. In weeks 3 and 4, we will be moving towards evaluation. For this particular week, you guys will have 4 different types of analysis that you're going to want to get caught up on, and I have made available for you on Blackboard under the Writing to Analyze section. Right now we are looking at cultural analysis. There will also be psychoanalysis, minority analysis, and reader response and authorial analysis. However, for this particular PowerPoint audio, we are looking at cultural analysis. So in regards to cultural analysis, it essentially stems from the belief that individual human subjectivity develops in a give-and-take relationship with its cultural milieu or its environment. So what does that mean? Anyone who sort of covers cultural theory believes or is in the camp that we are primarily influenced by the things around us within the confines and constructs of our culture. The government, the society, our families, all of these particular things fall within the realm of our culture, and these particular cultures essentially make up who we are as an individual. Cultural analysis observes that working class culture has been misunderstood and undervalued. Additionally, the dominant class dictates what forms of art are to be considered high or superior culture, which would kind of fall under things such as ballet, opera, the fine arts. It was like this for a very long time when you had a lot of these older societies where they had kings and monarchs and the very, very elite class sort of running things. You might suggest that it's still like that now, but trust me when I tell you that things are very different from how they used to be, especially when trying to determine cultural significance for ideas. Especially in our day and age when we've been able to become more educated, and when those educated few, such as yourself, went on to suggest that, listen, culture is something that we can analyze. It doesn't necessarily have to be considered high art forms to be culturally relevant. Culture, if it is something that impacts us, is going to impact a lot more of the population through different forms of media. And this can be seen through television, popular music, pulp fiction, which often have been relegated to the status of low or inferior culture. But in this day and age, we are finding that that's not necessarily the case. However, when utilizing cultural analysis, there's no meaningful distinction between high and low culture. All cultural productions can be analyzed to reveal the ways in which they shape our experience by transmitting or transforming ideologies. So what does that mean? Essentially, the different types of cultures that impact you in your daily life might be your schooling, the people you associate with, the people you work with, the type of business you work for, if you're part of a team, your family, your community, your ethnicity. All of these different things are subcultures that could potentially impact who you are as a person, could potentially impact your perspective on the world. So for example, the way a family culture may view a particular problem might be extremely different than the way a workplace analyzes an issue or area of concern. So for example, say for instance you happen to steal something from your job, your work culture might essentially fire you or send you home without pay. In the opposite effect, if you happen to steal something from a sister or a brother, you might just get a talking to from your parents. You might get grounded. But you can see that the implications and impact of each of these cultures is different for the individual. When we look at culture, we might also look at how culture is passed down from the very top to the very bottom. One question that I like to ask in class is, have any of you ever received terrible customer service, or have any of you ever received incredible, great, amazing customer service? That is usually dictated by the type of culture that the enterprise or the business tends to run. Companies like Starbucks, where they try to create a customer connection where they get to know you, they remember you, they know exactly what you're going to order, have created a culture of that type of customer connectivity. Where other companies, I'm not going to put any on blast, excuse me, Comcast, tend to send you through these particular cycles where you are going to be talking to a customer service rep or a machine for hours on end and essentially get you nowhere except frustrated and very annoyed. And so that usually starts at the top, and that's the type of culture that is cultivated. Lastly, when we look at these cultures through a context, cultural analysis blurs the line between high and low culture, and some of the best examples of cultural critiques will come from some of your favorite shows. So consider this. If you were deciding to write a cultural analysis about a particular topic, you could potentially look at a show, one of your favorite shows. I had a student who did a cultural analysis on South Park and observed the impact in which the show had over 20 seasons, sort of addressing the hits and misses of this type of show. If you see on the bottom left-hand corner, the former show Key and Peele, one of the actors on there, Jordan Peele, went on to make the movie Get Out, which essentially was a cultural analysis on the sort of African-American perspective in our culture that kind of shows this almost horrific day-to-day life that they live. And it's scary because it's not necessarily hyperbolic, is what the particular analysis would try to say, that it's not a far exaggeration. So remember, as with any of these analyses, if you decide that you want to write an analysis, you can focus on the larger topic or something relatively specific. If your primary focus is cultural, you might ask yourself, what kinds of behavior, what models of practice does this text seem to enforce? Why might readers at a particular time and place find this subject compelling? So remember that just because something might be compelling to you in your particular culture or time period doesn't mean that it's going to necessarily be interesting or relevant to someone 10 years from now, or it might not have been relevant to someone 10 years prior. So you have to make sure that you establish the context of whatever it is you are analyzing. What are the differences in my values and the values in the work I am viewing, reading, or listening to? And upon what social understandings does the work depend? So essentially, if you are looking at something through a cultural lens, you have to first identify what your entry point is. If it is from a sort of race discussion or your own ethnic background, you have to identify how you sort of fit into the conversation and what sorts of argument your analysis is trying to make. Perhaps you might be looking at something from a gender background and how your gender culture sort of influenced or allowed you to observe something through a unique particular lens. And essentially, that's what we are looking for with each of these types of analyses.